He came downstairs that night, angry and frustrated. The girl he'd planned to spend the night with canceled on him. But just as he poured himself a drink, he saw her. Amarachi, kneeling quietly by the TV stand, cleaning. She wore a faded blue gown, her scarf tied neatly, water dripping from her rag as she scrubbed. She didn't even know he was watching. But something dark snapped inside him. He walked toward her, slowly. Then, without warning, he grabbed her arm. "Sir," she gasped, startled. Before she could speak, he lifted her off the floor. And what happened next changed both of their lives forever. Stay tuned. Please don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. The mansion of Chief and Madam Okechukwu stood tall and proud in Lekki, polished floors, chandeliers like stars, and walls that whispered wealth. But beneath all the gold and glitter, a girl moved quietly in the shadows, wiping glass tables, dusting heavy furniture, and cleaning floors on her knees. Her name was Amarachi. Just 20, with skin the color of polished ebony and eyes that held deep silence, Amarachi came from a small village in Anambra State. Life had not been kind to her, but she never let bitterness bloom. She had one mission: work hard, send money to her sick mother, and keep her head down. The Okechukwu family had many workers, but Amarachi stood out, not because she spoke much, she rarely did, but because of how well she worked. She never complained, never stole, and always finished her tasks before anyone else. Madam Okechukwu often told her friends, "That girl is gold. If only Hugo had her heart." But Hugo, their only son, had no heart for anyone but himself. He had just returned from the UK, swaggering into the house like a king coming home from war. Tall, handsome, and arrogant beyond reason, he wore designer clothes and expensive cologne that filled the room long after he left. He changed girls the way others changed socks. Every day, a new one. Every night, a different face. Hugo didn't notice the staff, not really. To him, they were background noise. But Amarachi, she was different. She never smiled at his jokes. She never greeted him like the others. She looked him in the eye and walked away when he mocked her. And that, for a man like Hugo, was insulting. "Who does this poor thing think she is?" he once sneered to his friends while Amarachi passed. "I can have her if I want. She scrubs my toilet." From that day, Hugo made Amarachi a target. He would call her for useless tasks, ask her to clean his room even when it was spotless, or pour his drink and then push it aside untouched. He called her "my house rat" and laughed in her face. Still, Amarachi endured. She was used to suffering. She had lived with less. One rainy evening, everything changed. Hugo had planned a steamy night with a girl from social media, one of those Instagram models who promised the world. But she canceled last minute. "Sorry, babe, not in the mood." "Maybe next week," she texted. Hugo was furious. He paced his room like a lion in a cage. Angry, horny, drunk. The mansion was quiet. His parents were out for a party, the rain beating softly outside. Then he came downstairs to get a drink, and he saw her. Amarachi, kneeling by the TV console, cleaning. She wore a faded blue gown, her scarf tied neatly. Water dripped from her cleaning rag. She was focused, unaware of his presence. Hugo stood there, watching. Something snapped in him. He walked toward her, slowly. Without warning, he grabbed her arm from behind. "Sir," she said, startled. Before she could finish her sentence, he had lifted her off the floor. "Please, sir, what are you doing?" she struggled. But Hugo was stronger, drunker, and crueler than she could have imagined. That night, Amarachi lost something she could never get back. Her silence, her peace, her virginity. Afterwards, Hugo warned her coldly, "If you tell anyone, you'll lose your job, and you know your sick mother needs your salary." He walked away as if nothing happened. She lay curled up on the cold tiles of his room, whispering her mother's name. The days that followed were heavy. Amarachi said nothing. Who would believe a maid over the chief's son? She buried herself in chores, but her eyes had lost their shine. Her steps became slower. Her strength faded. But she worked, because her mother needed her to. Weeks passed. Then, her period didn't come. She waited. 1 week. 2 weeks. By the third, fear had gripped her so tight she could barely sleep. She snuck out one early morning and went to a nearby pharmacy. The test result made her knees weak. Positive. She sat behind the building and cried, quietly, so no one would hear. What would she do? She had no husband, no voice, no power. That night, she knocked softly on Hugo's door. He opened it, annoyed. "What is it now?" "I'm pregnant," she said, eyes cast down. He laughed, loud, mean. "Me? Pregnant? Are you mad? You better find the real father." Her lips trembled. "You're the only one who has touched me. You know that." For a moment, Hugo said nothing. His arrogance cracked slightly. He turned his face away. "Then go and abort it," he said finally. "I won't," she whispered. "It's not the child's fault." He stepped closer, his face suddenly dark. "Then don't ever tell anyone. If my parents find out, you're finished. And your sick mother? Who will care for her when you're thrown out?" She nodded slowly and walked away with the weight of the world on her shoulders. Amarachi grew weaker as the days passed. Nausea hit her often. But she kept cooking, cleaning, washing. She didn't have a choice. No one noticed, or maybe no one cared. Until one Sunday afternoon. She was serving lunch at the family table. Chief and Madame Okechukwu were laughing at something on TV. Hugo scrolled through his phone, pretending she didn't exist. Amarachi walked toward them with a tray of jollof rice. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. Then, her knees buckled. The tray crashed to the ground. And Amarachi collapsed. Madame Okechukwu screamed. Chief jumped to his feet. Hugo froze, watching as his secret lay unconscious before him. She was rushed to the hospital in the family driver's car. The doctor came out minutes later, holding a file. "She's stable," he said. "But weak. Severely overworked. And pregnant. About 7 weeks." Silence filled the waiting room like fog. Chief Okechukwu blinked. "What did you just say?" The doctor repeated, "She's pregnant." Silence hung thick in the hospital waiting room. Madame Okechukwu clutched her handbag tightly to her chest as if it would steady her racing heart. Chief Okechukwu just stared at the doctor, trying to process his words. "Pregnant." He echoed the word like it was foreign. The doctor nodded solemnly. "Yes. Roughly 7 weeks along. She's severely fatigued and underfed, but the pregnancy is stable." Madame Okechukwu sat down, stunned. "How can this be? Amarachi, she barely even talks to anyone." Then her eyes flicked to Hugo. He was standing in the corner of the waiting room, phone still in his hand, but his face, pale, tense. His fingers gripped the phone like it might slip. Madame turned sharply toward him. "Hugo." He blinked. "Mum." She stood. "Do you know anything about this?" Hugo swallowed hard. "Me? No. How would I know anything about her pregnancy?" But he didn't meet her eyes. Chief Okechukwu narrowed his gaze. "Hugo, you're stammering." "I'm not." Hugo snapped too quickly. The doctor interrupted. "She's awake now. You can see her, but only one at a time, please." Madame Okechukwu went in first. Inside the small white hospital room, Amarachi lay still, pale against the sheets. Her scarf had been removed, showing her braided hair loosened around her face. She looked young, fragile, like a child pretending to be strong. Madame Okechukwu approached slowly, her heels clicking on the tiles. "Amarachi," she said gently, sitting by her bedside. "How are you feeling?" Amarachi turned her head slowly. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Only tears slid silently down her cheeks. Madame reached for her hand. "My dear, you're safe now. But we need to talk. The doctor said you're pregnant. Who did this to you?" Amarachi blinked. Her fingers tightened slightly in Madame's hand. "I won't judge you," Madame added quickly. "But I need the truth." For a long moment, Amarachi said nothing. Then, her voice, barely a whisper, broke through the stillness. "Hugo." Madame Okechukwu froze. What did you say?" Tears flowed faster now as Amarachi's voice trembled. "It was Hugo, Ma. That night. It was raining. He dragged me. I said no. I begged him. But he forced me." Madame's heart shattered. Her throat tightened. She stood up and walked out of the room without a word. Outside, she marched straight to her husband and son. "Hugo," she said sharply, "we're going home." "No." He looked confused. "Mum." "No." The ride home was dead silent. Chief sat in front. Madame and Hugo in the back. Only the occasional swish of the windshield wipers broke the quiet. When they got home, Madame Okechukwu didn't wait. She turned on her son like a storm. "You monster!" she shouted. "You laid your filthy hands on that girl. A girl we took into our home like family." Hugo flinched. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like." Chief Okechukwu roared, now facing him. "You think you can do whatever you want just because you have money? You've brought shame into this house." "I was drunk," Hugo muttered. "It wasn't planned. I didn't mean to." Madame slapped him, not hard, but enough. "You think that excuses it? You ruined that girl's life. And you let her suffer, working like a slave in this house while carrying your child." Chief was breathing hard now. "We raised you better than this. You will take full responsibility for what you've done. And not just money, you will marry that girl." Hugo's head snapped up. "Marry her? Are you mad? She's a maid." "Not anymore," Madame said coldly. "You turned her into the mother of your child. You'll give her the respect she deserves." "I don't love her," he shouted. "You didn't have to love her before," Chief said, his voice low and deadly. "But you will honor her now." Hugo stormed out of the living room, slamming his door. The next day, Madame went to the hospital alone. Amarachi was sitting up this time, staring out the window. "You didn't have to come, Ma," she said softly. "I know I should leave now." "No, my dear," Madame said, sitting beside her. "You're not leaving." Amarachi turned to her, confused. "I know what my son did to you," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And I want you to know, I believe you. And I'm not letting this go." Tears spilled down Amarachi's cheeks again. "But Ma—" "You don't need to beg," Madame interrupted. "You're family now, whether Hugo likes it or not." Amarachi shook her head slowly. "I never wanted this life. I just wanted to help my mother." "I know," Madame whispered. "And that's why we'll help you now. You're not alone anymore." The family made arrangements immediately. A private room for Amarachi. A personal doctor. Nutritional care. Maternity clothes. Everything. But Hugo, he avoided her completely. He stayed locked in his room, angry, ashamed, and confused. His friends teased him. Social media whispers had started, though the family tried to keep it quiet. Somehow, word began to leak. The billionaire's son got the maid pregnant. It was trending in quiet corners of gossip blogs. Chief Okechukwu warned him, "If I hear you disgrace that girl one more time, you'll be out of this house and out of my will." That night, Hugo sat on his bed, staring at an old photo from university. A time when he was free, admired, untouchable. No. He was being forced to marry a girl he barely saw as human. And yet, a memory came back to him, Amarachi laughing softly one morning in the kitchen, before he returned from London. She was pouring tea and humming. Peaceful. Pure. He shook his head. "No. I don't love her," he whispered to himself. But a small part of him wasn't so sure anymore. Meanwhile, Amarachi stayed quiet. Grateful. But unsure of her future. Her world had turned upside down, from shame to sudden comfort. But her heart was tired. She didn't trust any of it. Not yet. She kept her mother updated, lying gently to protect her from the pain. "I'm okay, Mama," she'd say. "I got a better job now. They're taking care of me." "God bless them," her mother would whisper weakly. "God will reward you, my child. You're strong like your father." Amarachi would smile, then cry once the call ended. She wasn't strong. She was just surviving. Yugo stood at the edge of the corridor, watching from a distance as Amarachi sat in the garden, gently cradling her small baby bump. The early morning sun bathed her face in gold, and for the first time, Yugo noticed something that unsettled him. Even after all she had suffered, Amarachi sat there as if the world had not broken her, as if she still had strength to breathe. He turned away, guilt clawing at his chest. It had been over a month since the hospital incident. Amarachi had returned to the mansion, not as a maid, but as someone the family now treated with dignity. Madame Okechukwu personally oversaw her meals and health. Chief made it clear to everyone in the house that, "This girl is to be respected, she carries my grandchild." But Yugo, he still couldn't look her in the eye. Not because he hated her, but because he hated himself. Every time he saw her, he remembered what he did, what he took from her, and it haunted him more than he admitted. One afternoon, Yugo came home from a business meeting, shoulders heavy with stress, his mind buzzing. As he walked past the sitting room, he paused. Amarachi was there, struggling to lift a bucket of water from the floor. "Hey!" he called out before he could stop himself. She looked up quickly, startled. They hadn't spoken in weeks. You shouldn't be lifting that," he said awkwardly. "I'm fine," she replied quietly, avoiding his gaze. "No, you're not," he said, walking over. "You're pregnant." She didn't argue. She simply stepped back and let him carry it. They stood in silence after he dropped the bucket. Yugo rubbed the back of his neck. "Amarachi, I haven't said anything to you since... everything." She looked up at him, finally, and he saw no hate in her eyes. Just tiredness. "You don't have to say anything," she said softly. "No," he said firmly. "I do. I was a fool. I was disgusting. What I did to you, it's unforgivable." Amarachi blinked slowly, holding back tears. "I wanted to hate you," she whispered. "Every time I looked at you, I remembered how small you made me feel." Yugo bowed his head. "But then I looked at this child," she placed her hand on her belly, "and I told myself, this child will not be born from bitterness. I won't let your darkness enter him." Yugo's throat tightened. "Why aren't you angry?" She gave a weak smile. "Because anger doesn't heal. And I want to heal." Yugo nodded, speechless. From that day, things began to shift. Yugo started checking in on her. He brought her mangoes one evening because she'd once mentioned liking them. The next week, he offered to drive her to a prenatal appointment. Slowly, and awkwardly, he started showing up. Amarachi didn't trust it at first. She was cautious, guarded. But she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before: remorse. Not pity. Not guilt for getting caught. Yugo began to change, not because his parents forced him, but because he couldn't live with who he had become. He stopped partying. Started working at his father's company. He even told his friends to stop calling, especially the ones who laughed about Amarachi behind her back. One evening, he knocked on her door. "I want to do the right thing," he said. Amarachi looked up from her Bible. "What does that mean?" "I want to marry you, not because they told me to, but because I want to raise this child the right way. With you." Her heart skipped. "Do you love me?" she asked boldly. Yugo hesitated. Then he said something honest. "I don't know what love is. But I know I respect you. I admire your strength. And I want to spend the rest of my life making up for what I did." Tears slipped from Amarachi's eyes. The wedding was quiet. Just close family. No photographers. No noise. Madame Okechukwu dressed Amarachi herself, a simple white lace gown, no veil. Her braided hair woven with fresh flowers. Her eyes glistened with hope and fear. Yugo waited at the altar, nerves twisting in his gut. But when Amarachi walked in, everything fell still. His heart pounded, not from guilt, but from awe. She wasn't the maid anymore. She was his wife. One night, he knelt beside her bed, held her hand, and whispered, "Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for letting me love you." She smiled. "Thank you for becoming the man you were meant to be." Sometimes, pain leads to purpose. Sometimes, broken people heal each other. And sometimes, The poor maid becomes the queen of the mansion, not because she fought, but because she forgave. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, leave a comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel.